Good morning, everyone. Today we're checking out a brand new video from the Goji Center about the Jurassic Park's mutated D-Rex. Explained. Let's hop in and see what we can learn about this brand new Indominus Rex. Or maybe not Indominus, I'm not sure. Screw it. Let's find out.
While millions of people were watching the highly anticipated trailer to the next adventure in the Jurassic universe, there was no doubt that the one big question on everyone's minds was, what the hell is that?
What the hell is that?
On this episode of Goji Center, we're going to take a deep dive into everything we figured out about the latest Jurassic World monstrosity.
It's a knuckle
Before we
walker?
proceed, however, note that we will be analyzing both the trailer, behind-the-scenes information, and share some possible plot leak information found in the wretched corners of the internet, including a possible full design reveal of this new monster. So, here's a potential spoiler warning for this year's upcoming blockbuster. Don't say we didn't warn you.
Nah, I'm fine.
In Jurassic World Rebirth, we follow both a wayward family and a hired mercenary group working for a pharma company, winding up on an unknown island with a grim present and an even darker history. Dinosaurs released into the world in the last couple of movies have settled into areas like this, and InGen was conducting some of their earliest experiments in the same location many decades ago. But nothing, from the pack-hunting Spinosaurus to the kaiju-sized Titanosaurs, was as horrifying as this.
Remarkable
The Goji Center modeling team has quickly put together a three-dimensional model of what we think the new mutant monster looks like, standing possibly over 25 feet.
Okay, hold on. Why does it have two sets of arms? I'm sorry. I thought this was meant to be a dinosaur, not a frickin' xenomorph!
Tall and no doubt having a weight in the tens of thousands of pounds, this nightmarish beast.
Oh wait, no, that thing is not walking on its knuckles, it's walking on its fingers. That is so weird.
Doesn't have a confirmed name yet, but as a tribute to a forgotten monstrosity from the 90s, we're also nicknaming this the D-Rex for now. Even after all the strange beasts we've seen in the franchise, nothing comes close to this. A malformed mutant with multiple sets of arms, knuckle-walking fists with massive claws, and a bulbous forehead that could imply anything from echolocation abilities like a beluga or a malformed skull like some embryos develop. For this part of the video, we'll entertain the idea that this was not an intentional design. After all, 6 limbs, a body that looks like somebody threw a Rancor into a blender with a Muto, and huge knuckle-walking fists aren't exactly anything you find in the dinosaur fossil record. According to scattered rumors and a few alleged plot details, this was one of the very earliest genetic creations by InGen, back in the 1980s, when the genomes were sequenced further before being shipped off to production on Site B. This would make even more sense considering Rexy was one of the earliest dinosaurs the company created, according to the viral marketing, being born sometime in the late 1980s. If InGen did indeed create this animal, this malformed abomination would almost certainly be older and was made with older tech. Having said this, it is actually quite possible that this animal could be reaching its 50s, assuming it was made in the mid to late 70s. If it was made in the early 80s, then we'd still be looking at an animal well beyond the life expectancy of a real T-Rex, with the very old specimens not living much past the age of 30. It's almost certain that this mutant Rex has many years under its belt. With old age, we can also associate older technology, and this may have been a culprit as to why it came out looking this way.
Why it looks so
Genetics
effed up,
technology from the start to the end of the 80s was drastically more primitive compared to the tech scene in the early 90s, let alone the much more advanced computers used in the 2010s. Things like CM5 supercomputers used on Isla Nublar and Sorna were not around back then.
Hello, John. Hello, John.
Thinking machine supercomputers and gene sequencers break down the strand in minutes. We use the complete DNA of a frog to fill in the holes and complete the code.
That little bit of marketing in Hammond's show and tell might be plot relevant. Tech like that was integral to making the incomplete DNA viable by either repairing the code or filling in the missing parts with frog DNA. Correctly. Yeah, this is really easy to screw up, which is why in the real world we don't see much of this happening. If more primitive tech was used in the creation of this mutant, that might explain how this animal wound up looking the way it does. To be clear, the InGen geneticists behind the creation of this D-Rex were not planning for it to look like this. This animal was probably a failed attempt at making a giant theropod.
That
No
was
amount of
a
healthy
high
hybridization
likelihood, yeah.
splicing should ever cause multiple limbs to appear. Alright, so in the following segment, we're going to learn a bit of genetics, so brace tight and pay close attention. Understanding
science.
this will help you appreciate this mutant Rex just a tiny bit more, and open a possible theory for another bizarre explanation as to why this animal exists. Hox genes are clusters of genes that control the basic body plan of any animal. Mutations
okay.
can change the shape and size of limbs, that's how evolution can happen, but these genes are hard-coded so that the body configuration stays the same. That is why tetrapods like us and every other land vertebrate have never had limbs where our heads are, or arms sticking out of our legs, or more than 4 limbs after 300 million years.
Thank
In other
goodness.
words, gene splicing shouldn't cause this. So, what went wrong? You can blame this on a phenomenon known as polymelia. This is a
Go on.
rare mutation that affects the Hox genes. It happens when there's a mistake in the DNA that causes the Hox genes to duplicate or change, leading to problems with the animal's body structure. In this case, the geneticists botched the DNA rebuilding process using subpar computers or just weren't careful enough to fill these gaps. The result was a bastardized attempt at creating the franchise's iconic star. Let's take another, more
It definitely
closer
made
look at
something.
the mutant Rex. Now note that this animal all over the internet has been referred to as a mutant. Not a hybrid, not an amalgamation, but a mutant. This word has many other implications as well. Usually when an animal
Go ahead
is
and keep
mutated,
talking.
there could be instances
Ooh.
where any extra adjacent limbs or even heads are not placed in perfect symmetry. Examples of this include Stumpy the four-legged duck, born with its normal set of legs, but with an extra 2 asymmetrical limbs. Octogoat, an animal born in a Croatian farm
Oh, I
with
remember
duplicate
that.
sets of limbs, a total of 8, is another example of animals that went through mutations during their embryonic stage, yielding an extra set of limbs. Our mutant Rex here could have gone through a similar situation, with 2 extra large limbs congruent enough for it to be able to knuckle walk, but with 2 extra smaller limbs with 2 digits, which was present in the real-life T-Rex. But these
Yeah.
elongated front limbs are something that are not present in T-Rex. So, what happened here? Remember,
I don't
in the
know.
Jurassic Park film, it was mentioned that frog DNA was used to fill in the gaps in the genetic code of some of these animals. It is a plausible theory that the use of this animal could explain the T-Rex's unsettling appearance.
Oh, most likely.
Frogs famously go through a metamorphosis, where the tadpole starts growing limbs as the tail shrinks as they mature. This is after they are born. This might have been an explanation as to why things got messed up during the D-Rex's embryonic stage. At the time of the creation of this video, there is no official reveal of the full design of this creature. So far, however,
This is a
things may
guesstimate.
seem like this
Yeah.
animal features bilateral symmetry, meaning both sides of this animal are the same. This would actually be extremely rare in a mutated animal, so having said this, there is still a chance that the limbs of this animal may be slightly asymmetrical, resulting in a creature experiencing ongoing discomfort and a painful existence. In the trailer,
Yeah.
we see certain shots
I can honestly see this thing just constantly screaming out in pain.
showing one of our heroes, Duncan, luring it away with a flare, further lining up with the possibility that this animal was indeed an early attempt at making a T-Rex, since both this and Rexy are attracted to flares. T-Rex features are visible in the face,
That
a
is
wide
true.
jaw somewhat resembling that of T-Rex mandibles. Even if these may not be working at optimal capacity, we could still expect a monstrous bite force that could snap a person in 2. That is, if it could even reach them. The build of this animal strangely resembles a Muto. If an animal like this,
Surprisingly.
at this speculated height, were to bring its jaws close to the ground to eat a human, it would have to mimic this stance, spreading its front limbs to the side enough to bring its head low.
Exactly,
This is
yeah.
inefficient in terms of combat, leading us to believe that this mutation forces the animal to use its front limbs as its main weapon. The predominant 2-digit hands could serve as a potential striking or slashing weapon,
I
only
can see
using
that.
its jaws at very close range and if needed. The only reason why this would be a good combatant would be because of its size and reach. Speaking of which, we need to figure out why this animal ended up being so big, despite its base genome being a T-Rex.
Yeah, what
Recall
is
what
it?
we learned about Hox genes. Our
Okay, correction. What is it made from?
theory is that because these were possibly corrupted during the embryonic stage, the affected Hox gene cluster might influence growth-related genes, not only adding additional limbs, but also the size of these limbs. Note that the height of T-Rex is largely due to its elongated limbs. During this animal's embryonic stage, it is the Hox genes that normally influence the number and length of these limbs, resulting in polymelia. The mass of the body, torso, and head is still similar in mass to a normal Jurassic Park T-Rex. It's the limbs that were affected. However, this does not end here. Hox mutations sometimes also lead to something called neotenic traits. This is where certain juvenile characteristics are retained in adult forms. This can explain why T-Rex retained a bulbous-looking head upon maturing and a strange natal form on its upper torso. The result of all the discussed mutations is this: a botched attempt at making a T-Rex, but functional enough to have survived for a very long time. This scene in a functional facility featuring the T-Rex is probably a flashback to when this lab was functional. Note the size difference between this one and this one, meaning that this one was likely an infant, but a more...
Yeah, if I had to guess, this one is standing at about maybe 10 to roughly 15 feet, while the adult one that we've seen is about 25 or so.
Interesting observation is the fact that this animal is seemingly taking its time to attack this individual. This suggests that this creature, despite being younger, already displays traits of a shrewd and collected individual. Not rushing to acquire an easy meal, but more observant, learning about its world as it grew. What does this mean for this even older and mature mutant Rex?
It's very
perhaps
intelligent.
An even more frightening, intelligent, and perhaps malevolent new monster. There is one alternative way to look at this, and this is purely based on a few hints that have been pointed out in the trailer. Earlier, we discussed the idea that these scenes showcased a lab owned by InGen. Assuming that they weren't, and instead were owned by another brand new company introduced to the franchise, Parker Genix, we may be looking at a scenario where this mutant isn't exactly too old. This theory has merit, given that some of the tech seen in these clips isn't exactly screaming 1980s, but rather a more recent timeline closer to the 2010s.
100%.
Company takeovers of other islands, such as Manticorp seen in Camp Cretaceous and Masrani in Isla Nublar, prove that this has already happened before. The most important takeaway from all of this is the following. If this mutant was created in the modern era, was this actually an experiment gone wrong? We already discussed that Hox genes are practically what control how certain traits of an animal look like. Believe it or not, these actually can and have been tampered with before to create custom augmentations to animals. Just now, during the creation of this episode, we received word that Argentinian biotech company Chiron created a genetically modified horse that was augmented to run faster. Allegedly, the entire genome of this horse was modified and completed before this animal even underwent gestation. Sound familiar? That's right. The gene that developed the appropriate muscles that allowed faster acceleration speed were tampered with precision, creating a horse that is a lot faster than the base genome of Champion Polo Puerta, the horse that served as a base. These methods and technology have been researched for many years. So, back to the Jurassic universe, and using this logic, there is probably a chance that the same thing could have happened here. By targeting the appropriate genes and identifying them as the ones that mess with limbs, bone length, and even muscular augmentation, Parker Genix perhaps knew what they were doing the entire time. This process had to be done with modern tech, serving as further evidence that this animal was probably made by Parker Genix. This entire excuse to go back to an island and get a hold of 3 large animals could just be a cover-up to once again regain possession of a valuable genetically altered asset. One who laid waste to this lab long ago, but now sought after to be reclaimed by its own creators.
I would just say, nah, screw that. That thing is not getting anyone off this boat. I mean, island, whatever. Anyway, folks, that's going to be the end of today's episode. I hope you all enjoyed this. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Link to the original will be in the description below, and I'll see all of y'all next time when we flick back on. Until then, this is Fox, signing out. Peace.